They thought the cameras weren't rolling. They thought no one would ever see what really went down that night. But when the fists started flying and the truth came crashing out, there was no turning back. Kirk Frost and young Jock to names. We've seen laughing together, partying together, hustling side by side, were suddenly caught in the middle of a violent showdown that shocked everyone. And now with explosive video evidence leaked to the public. Both men are facing not just humiliation, but handcuffs, jail time, and the kind of scandal that could end everything they've built. They thought the cameras weren't rolling. They thought no one would ever see what really went down that night. But when the fists started flying and the truth came crashing out, there was no turning back. Kirk Frost and young Jock, two names we've seen laughing together, partying together, hustling side by side, were suddenly caught in the middle of a violent showdown that shocked everyone. And now with explosive video evidence leaked to the public. Both men are facing not just humiliation, but handcuffs, jail time, and the kind of scandal that could end everything they've built. It all started like any other night. Atlanta's nightlife was buzzing and the city streets were alive with music, flashing lights, and familiar faces from the hip-hop world. Clubs were packed, bottles were popping, and everyone seemed to be having the time of their lives. But behind the scenes, tension had been boiling for weeks. Rumors about disrespect, betrayal, and business deals gone wrong had been circulating in whispers. Some said Jock felt Kirk wasn't keeping his word on a financial move. Others said Kirk had accused Jock of running his mouth to the wrong people. Whatever the truth was, the cracks in their friendship were widening. And that night was when it all finally exploded. Eyewitnesses claim the argument started inside a popular lounge where both Kirk and Jock happened to be with their entourages. At first, it was just heated words. The kind of back-and-forth banter you'd expect between men with big egos and a lot to prove. People in the crowd thought it would blow over in minutes, but the energy shifted. Drinks were spilled, voices got louder, and phones came out. The moment Jock slammed his hand on the table, you could feel the entire vibe of the room change. Kirk leaned forward, pointing his finger in Jock's face, and that's when the shouting turned into something much darker. The leaked footage, which has already spread like wildfire across social media, shows the chaos that followed. The grainy clip begins with Jock shoving Kirk backward, nearly knocking him into the crowd of people behind him. Kirk immediately lunged forward, swinging wildly, and within seconds, fists were flying. The sound of glass breaking, people screaming, and security rushing in filled the air. The two men, once seen as brothers, were now locked in a violent clash in front of dozens of horrified onlookers. What makes this situation even more shocking is how quickly it spiraled out of control. This wasn't just a scuffle. It was brutal, raw, and terrifying to watch. Jock, known for his wild energy and unpredictable behavior, was throwing punches with everything he had. Kirk, usually the calm and calculating businessman, seemed completely unhinged. It wasn't about money anymore. It wasn't about pride. It looked personal, like years of frustration and anger had finally erupted in the ugliest way possible. And while fans might have assumed it would all end with security breaking it up and everyone walking away, the reality turned out much worse. By the time police arrived on the scene, both men were already bloodied and enraged, refusing to calm down. Officers reportedly had to use force to separate them. And according to eyewitness accounts, Kirk continued yelling threats while Jock was being restrained. The moment handcuffs clicked shut around their wrists, you could feel the weight of the consequences settling in. These weren't just two celebrities having an argument. These were two men facing criminal charges. And the cameras were there to capture it all. The leaked video cuts off just as police are pulling them apart. But the damage was already done. In the age of social media where nothing stays hidden, the footage went viral within minutes. Fans couldn't believe their eyes. The comment sections were flooded with shock, disappointment, and endless speculation about what triggered such an explosive fight. Some blamed alcohol, others said it was jealousy. A few even suggested this might be a setup to create publicity. But the look in their eyes during that brawl, the rage, the fury didn't look staged at all. It looked real, and it looked dangerous. For Kirk Frost, this scandal couldn't have come at a worse time. Already criticized for past controversies, in his personal life and business decisions, being arrested on camera adds another layer of shame to his reputation. Fans of love and hip-hop remember his history of messy relationships, cheating allegations, and public arguments with his wife, Rashida. Many were already questioning whether he could redeem himself. Now, instead of moving forward, he's being dragged right back into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Young Jock, on the other hand, has always been known as the wild card of the group. His unpredictable antics and larger-than-life personality made him a fan favorite, but also someone constantly surrounded by drama. From failed relationships to viral moments that had people laughing at him instead of with him, Jock's career has been a roller coaster. But this time, no one's laughing. This isn't a joke or a meme, it's a serious situation that could derail everything he's worked for. What makes this fight even more shocking is the history between these two men. Kirk and Jock weren't just casual acquaintances. They had years of friendship, business ties, and countless nights spent together in Atlanta's scene. To see that bond destroyed so violently and so publicly has left fans heartbroken. People who once admired their loyalty to each other are now left wondering if Kirk and Jock can fall apart like this. What does it say about the entire circle of friendships in that world? And then comes the legal side of the story. Atlanta police confirmed that both men were booked on charges of disorderly conduct and public fighting, with possible assault charges pending depending on the injuries sustained. The fact that the fight was captured on video makes it almost impossible to deny. What happened? Lawyers may argue, statements may be given, but the footage speaks for itself. The court of public opinion has already delivered its verdict, and it's not looking good for either Kirk or JOC. As the night ended with flashing police lights and sirens echoing through the streets, fans and critics alike couldn't shake the image of two men who had everything: money, fame, influence, throwing it all away in a matter of minutes, and with the video still spreading across every platform imaginable. This scandal isn't going away anytime soon. But here's the question that everyone is asking. What exactly pushed Kirk Frost and young Jock over the edge? Was it really just a simple argument that got out of hand? Or is there something deeper: betrayal, secrets, lies that finally forced the truth to come spilling out in the most violent way possible? Because if there's one thing Atlanta knows, it's that nothing happens in that world without a reason. And behind every shocking moment, there's always a bigger story waiting to be uncovered. The flashing blue and red lights outside. The club became the image burned into everyone's mind. Kirk Frost and young Jock weren't just celebrities anymore. They were inmates being processed. Their mugshots already circulating before the night even ended. The story was too big, too shocking, and too messy for the media to ignore. By sunrise, every gossip blog, entertainment site, and Instagram page had one headline: Kirk Frost and young Jock arrested after violent fight. And with that, the fallout began. Inside the holding cell, reality started to sink in. Sources close to the situation claim Kirk sat in silence, his face bruised, his shirt torn, staring at the cold floor. Jock, on the other hand, paced the room, cursing under his breath, still too fired up to calm down. Both men had refused to speak to each other, even as officers tried to take their statements separately. What was once a brotherhood had turned into a wall of pure hatred. By the time their wives, family members, and close friends found out what had happened, the damage was done. Rashida, who had stood by Kirk through years of scandals, was said to be furious. She wasn't just embarrassed, she was exhausted. For a woman who had built her own brand, her own empire. and her own reputation as one of the strongest women in the reality TV world. Seeing her husband once again humiliate himself in public was the final straw for many fans watching her reaction unfold online. People flooded her Instagram with comments like, "Sis, leave him already, and Rashida deserves better." Whether she liked it or not, the public was already writing the next chapter of her story. For Jock, the reaction wasn't any kinder. His exes, the mothers of his children, and even some of his current associates wasted no time throwing shade on social media. One cryptic post from a woman linked to Jock read, "When you let pride and ego run your life, you end up exactly where you belong, locked up." Another ex simply posted laughing emojis under a headline about his arrest. Jock has always been known as the man with too many women, too many stories, and too much drama. But now the women in his life were turning his pain into entertainment. What fans didn't realize at first was that this fight wasn't born. In that club, it had been building for months. Sources close to both Kirk and Jock started to reveal the backstory, and it was darker than anyone imagined. Rumors surfaced about a messy business deal involving money that went missing, a failed investment that Kirk allegedly blamed Jock for, and whispers of personal betrayal involving people close to their families. Some even speculated that Jock had disrespected Rashida in a way Kirk could never forgive. Whether those rumors were true or not, one thing was certain. This fight was about more than just ego. The video footage made its way to mainstream outlets. And suddenly, CNN, Fox, and even morning talk shows were covering the brawl like it was breaking national news. Clips of Kirk and Jock swinging at each other played on repeat. Their faces replayed in slow motion as analysts debated what this meant for the future of love and hip-hop, Atlanta, and their reputations. The memes came just as fast as the headlines. Jock's infamous hairstyles were suddenly photoshopped into fight scenes. And Kirk's history of cheating scandals was dragged back into the spotlight with captions like he can't even stay loyal in a fight. For VH1 and the Love and Hip-Hop producers, this was both a nightmare and a dream. On one hand, the bad press could ruin partnerships and sponsorships. On the other, controversy sells. Fans were already demanding that the next season cover every detail of the fight, every angle of the scandal, and every secret behind what went down. Ratings were practically guaranteed to skyrocket if the network played their cards right. But for Kirk and Jock themselves, this wasn't about ratings, it was about survival. Behind the scenes, both men were scrambling for damage control. Kirk called his lawyer immediately, hoping to reduce charges and avoid jail time. Jock reached out to his management team, desperate to protect his brand from collapsing. But neither could escape the fact that the footage was everywhere, and the court of public opinion was against them. Every time they refreshed their phones, more blogs, more tweets, and more YouTube channels were tearing them apart. And then came the whispers about betrayal. Some insiders claimed that the video wasn't leaked. Randomly, it was released deliberately. The angle, the timing, the way it spread so quickly, all pointed to someone close to them who wanted the world to see their downfall. Speculation ran wild. Was it someone from Jock's circle, tired of his reckless ways? Was it someone from Kirk's camp, eager to expose him? Or could it have been a producer from Love and Hip Hop, looking to spark the next big storyline? No one knew for sure, but the betrayal cut just as deep as the bruises on their faces. Rashida, meanwhile, was left to pick up the pieces of her own life. Friends close to her revealed that she was humiliated, tired of defending a man who kept dragging her name through the mud. The tabloids splashed her photo across their covers with headlines like, "Rashida stands by Kirk again." And will. She'll finally walk away. For a woman who had spent years building her reputation as a businesswoman and artist, her identity was once again reduced to being the wife of a man who couldn't stay out of trouble. And as much as she wanted to focus on her empire, the public wasn't letting her escape the drama. On Jock's side, his crew was divided. Some were still loyal, insisting he was provoked and only defended himself. Others distanced themselves quickly, not wanting to be caught in the crossfire. Atlanta's streets were buzzing with speculation, and everyone had a different version of the story. In a city where reputation means everything, both men had just lost the one thing money can't buy: respect. The humiliation didn't stop with the public. Behind bars, other inmates reportedly recognized Kirk and Jock, some mocking them, others treating them like celebrities. The idea of two reality TV stars locked up for a street-style brawl was almost surreal. But for Kirk and Jock, there was nothing glamorous about it. Stripped of their jewelry, their entourages, and their egos, they were just two men in trouble. Staring down a future that suddenly looked uncertain as the hours turned into days. The question of bail became the next big headline. Fans waited anxiously to see who would bail them out, how much it would cost, and whether anyone close to them would even show up. For Kirk, the expectation was that Rashida would be there, as she always had been, silently proving her loyalty. For Jock, it was less certain. With so many strained relationships, no one knew who would come to his rescue. By the end of the weekend, both men were released on bail, but the world they stepped back into wasn't the same one they left. The cameras were waiting. The paparazzi shouted questions. Fans held up phones, ready to capture every reaction, every word, every slip-up. Both men kept their heads down, refusing to speak. But their silence only made the public hungrier for answers. The stage was set for a showdown. Bigger than the fight itself, the trial of their reputations, their friendships, and their futures. Because this scandal wasn't just about fists thrown in a club. It was about betrayal, pride, and the price of fame. And as Kirk and Jock walked out into the blinding flash of cameras, one thing was clear. The real story was only just beginning. The silence after their release was deafening. Kirk Frost and young Jock walked out of jail with swollen faces, bruised egos, and the weight of the world pressing down on them. The cameras flashed mercilessly as both men tried to cover their faces, but there was no hiding from the storm they had created. In Atlanta, everyone was talking, everyone had an opinion, and everyone wanted to know what would happen next. The court dates were set, and suddenly the fight wasn't just a piece of viral gossip, it was a legal battle. Prosecutors made it clear that this case wouldn't be swept under the rug just because they were celebrities. The footage was evidence. The charges were real, and both Kirk and Jock could be facing fines, probation, or worse, time behind bars. Lawyers lined up on both sides, preparing to argue not only for their freedom, but for their reputations. Knowing that one wrong move could permanently destroy everything these men had built. Inside the courtroom, the tension was thick. Reporters crowded the benches, typing furiously as every word was spoken. Kirk, dressed in a dark suit, tried to look composed, but his eyes told the story of a man on the edge. Jock, wearing his signature flair but stripped of his usual confidence, looked restless, tapping his foot, glancing around the room as though searching for someone who could save him. Their fans, their families, and even some of their enemies sat watching, eager to see how the drama would unfold. Rashida arrived with her head held high, but the cracks were showing. Years of humiliation, years of defending Kirk, years of being dragged through the mud had left her exhausted. She didn't sit close to him. She didn't smile. Her presence was less about loyalty and more about duty. Woman bound to a man who had tied her name to scandal one too many times. Whispers filled the courtroom as people speculated. Was this the breaking point for Rashida? Was she finally done? Jock's support system looked just as shaky. Some of his friends had shown up, but the absence of many familiar faces spoke volumes. The women who once stood by him were nowhere to be seen, leaving him to face the consequences largely alone. The confident, larger-than-life personality fans knew from television was replaced by a man who looked cornered, exposed, and vulnerable. And then came the bombshell. As the prosecution presented evidence, it wasn't just the fight video that came to light. A series of leaked text messages were entered into the record, suggesting that someone close to Kirk and Jock had been feeding information to outsiders long before the brawl ever happened. These weren't random leaks, they were deliberate, calculated, and meant to cause maximum damage. The courtroom gasped as the texts were displayed, showing conversations about money, loyalty, and betrayal. Speculation exploded once again. Who was the mole? Who had recorded the fight and leaked it? And why? Rumors swirled that a disgruntled associate of Jock's, someone who felt burned in a business deal, had set him up. Others believed a producer from Love and Hip Hop had orchestrated everything to guarantee explosive ratings. But then the whispers turned darker. Some began pointing fingers at someone even closer at Rashida herself. Could she have finally had enough of Kirk's lies and decided to expose him in the harshest way possible? The idea seemed outrageous, but the timing, the access, and the quiet rage she carried made people question what she might be capable of if pushed too far. For Kirk, the suggestion that his own wife could have betrayed him cut deeper than any punch Jock had landed. But Rashida refused to play into the gossip. She kept her composure, refusing to confirm or deny anything, leaving the world guessing. That silence only made the rumors louder. Meanwhile, Jock's name was being dragged through the mud in ways he couldn't escape. His past mistakes were resurfacing, his failed relationships were being dissected, and people were using this fight as proof that he was reckless, unstable, and toxic. Jock tried to speak out, posting a cryptic message on Instagram that read, "The truth always comes out. Just wait." But instead of earning sympathy, it fueled more speculation about hidden betrayals and secrets that hadn't been revealed yet. The trial dragged on. But outside the courtroom, the real battle was playing out online. Fans took sides, with some defending Jock, others siding with Kirk, and many more calling both of them out for embarrassing themselves and the community. Memes, think pieces, and endless live streams broke down every second of the footage, every statement from court, every glance Rashida gave her husband. The fight had become more than a scandal, it was a cultural moment. But then came the twist no one saw coming. Weeks into the case, investigators traced the origin of the leaked video. The person responsible wasn't a stranger, wasn't a producer, wasn't even a distant associate. It was someone inside their very own circle. The video had been leaked by a mutual friend, someone who had been close to both Kirk and Jock for years. Someone who had been trusted at their tables, at their homes, and even in their business meetings. The betrayal was devastating. That friend, whose name quickly spread online, had allegedly been recording for months, capturing moments of tension, arguments, and finally, the fight itself. Their motive: money and revenge. They had sold the footage to a gossip outlet for a massive payout, throwing Kirk and Jock's lives into chaos for personal gain. The revelation shook both men to their core. For all their anger at each other, they realized they had been pawns in someone else's game, but the damage was already done. Trust was shattered, reputations were scarred, and the world had already seen too much. Kirk and Jock, once brothers, now stood not only as enemies, but as victims of betrayal from within. Their friendship was beyond repair, their careers hanging by a thread, and their futures uncertain. For Rashida, the scandal was her breaking point. Insiders revealed she had quietly moved out of the shared home she had with Kirk, focusing instead on her businesses and her children. Though she didn't make a public statement, her actions spoke louder than words. Fans applauded her strength, calling it long overdue, while others speculated whether this was just another chapter in her ongoing saga with Kirk. Either way, the narrative had shifted. She was no longer just the supportive wife. She was the woman who finally put herself first. As for Jock, the betrayal cut differently. He lashed out on social media, calling out fake friends, vowing to rebuild his circle, and promising that his side of the story would one day come out. But whether the public would be ready to listen or care was another question entirely in the end. The court handed down sentences that spared both men jail time but left them with probation, fines, and mandatory counseling. It was a legal slap on the wrist, but a life sentence in the court of public opinion. Their names would forever be tied to that fight, that video, that night when everything fell apart. And as the dust settled, one thing became painfully clear. In the world of fame, friendship, and betrayal, no one is safe. Not Kirk, not Jock, not even Rashida. 'Cause when the cameras are always watching and betrayal lurks closest to home, one wrong move can destroy everything. The fight may have ended. The court may have closed the case, but the scars, both physical and emotional, will never fully heal. Atlanta will remember that night. Fans will remember that footage, and Kirk Frost and young Jock will forever be remembered not just as reality stars, but as the men who let pride, anger, and betrayal bring their empire crashing down. This story is far from over, and you don't want to miss what happens next. What really caused the fallout between Kirk Frost and young Jock? Is it betrayal, money, or something even deeper that hasn't come to light yet? And how will Rashida's next move change everything? One thing is for sure, this scandal is rewriting the future of Atlanta's hip-hop scene. And the truth is still unfolding right before our eyes. If you've been shocked by what you've seen tonight, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications, because the next chapter is going to be even more explosive. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Whose side are you on? Do you think Kirk and Jock can ever bounce back, or has the damage been done for good? And don't